Japanese politics is dominated by several political parties, including the Communist Party, the Minshuto, the Democratic Party of Japan, the LDP. The LDP happens to be in a coalition right now with Komeito. It's a really interesting mix. Right now, what we are seeing and we're witnessing is a potential implosion of one of the political parties. It's a party that's in opposition. It used to run the government about 6 years ago. It didn't fare very well. Michael, what's happening with the DPJ?
Well, the DPJ is the main opposition party here in Japan. And it has not been able to attract very much in the way of popularity. Ever since Mr. Abe became prime minister, the LDP has simply dominated the political field.
Well, people felt cheated by them. They felt...
Well, it's true. The DPJ was the government party from 2009 to 2012. And yes, the people did feel cheated because they did not follow through on their promises, whether it was promises made in a very cynical way by the leader Ozawa Ichiro, or the more sincere, basic promises that had been part of the party structure since its founding in 1996. Whatever it was, the DPJ did not live up to its promises, and it was dumped as a party and as a ruling party in 2012. But what has not happened that has been very strange is that there has not been, after a period of time, forgiveness. And indeed, what we've seen is that the LDP, the party in power, has gone from strength to strength. Now, that's contrary to the way that it's been historically. The LDP has, in the past, gotten in trouble with corruption, with arrogance, and its popularity has gone down. And that was the way the party was going from the 1970s onward. That hasn't reappeared, and there has been no flowering of interest in an opposition to the LDP, so that the DPJ right now is hovering at an absolutely embarrassing level of 7 to 8% support, whereas the LDP has a very high 40, 41, 43% support rate.
The internal dynamics right now, I mean, they're having meetings about we should coalesce our forces. No, we should have a coalition with perhaps the Communist Party. We've got an election coming up in 7 months. We need to win this election, and perhaps by dividing our resources, maybe with the other opposition parties, we can take this over.
Throughout the summer, the Communist Party has been singing a siren call to the DPJ, saying, look, we got stuffed in the security legislation. We don't have a plan really altogether to work against the LDP in the 2016 House of Councilors elections. Let's work together. Unfortunately, one of the founding principles of the DPJ is that it is the non-communist opposition. So the Communist Party is either ignoring or intentionally undermining the DPJ by singing a sweet song to it. Now, numerically, it makes sense for the opposition parties to work together because they are in such a disparate situation as compared to the LDP. They simply don't have the numbers, they don't have the money, they don't have the ability to compete against each other. They don't want to get stuck competing as competing opposition parties when the LDP has a candidate in a district. The opposition parties will negate each other, and the LDP candidate will win re-election. So there's a real logic to it. However, there are conservatives in the DPJ, mostly who actually surreptitiously or openly support the security legislation. Now, they kept their mouths shut as the party opposed Mr. Abe's efforts and the efforts of the LDP and the Komeito this summer. But now, with the communists singing this song to the party leadership, they're saying, we want no part of it. Instead, what we want to do is have us in a conservative coalition with bits and pieces of conservative parties that then have already broken up. That would be the Minna no To, the Your Party, which broke up 2 years ago, and now the JIP, the Japan Innovation Party.
Can we get away from the horse race and just talk about what the DPJ's platform is?
Sure.
Okay. So can we just put the issues out on the table? Because my eyes glaze over when you talk about all these parties. I see the LDP as being great at marketing, staying on message, the DPJ, all I ever hear is it's imploding or they perform very poorly, they're in single digits.
They're in opposition.
But again, that's kind of the horse race. So do they have anything really worth fighting for, worth supporting? I don't care that they formed 20 years ago. I could really care less about political parties. I care about what do they represent that could be good for Japanese people, that would make rational sense to them to turn against the party that's basically been around since the very beginning, right after the occupied era. It's got the brand with Japan. So if you could just tell me maybe 1, 2, 3 of their issues that are in opposition. Are they a true opposition party? If so, two, what are their couple of top issues?
Right.
Educate me, because I really don't know anything about the DPJ. I just hear that they're weak.
Well, in this case, the sales point here is that it's the non-communist opposition.
And it's the non-LDP.
Yeah, but you just said they're going to try to work, or the communists are singing a sweet song to them.
That's right. And
that's not going to work.
That's right. But the thing is that you asked also that they have a message. Well, the message is the same. The communists and the DPJ both have an interest in maintaining the Constitution, maintaining constitutional procedures, and in opposing the LDP's steamrollering over the basic fundamental issues having to do with how this country has been run since the occupation.
But then it got complicated because you said some members of the DPJ are actually in support of the security bill.
Well,
I understand how parties, there's variance, so I get that, but yeah.
Well, the parties, the DPJ coalesced not only because of policies, but also because of an image of being a clean party, a party without corruption, as opposed to the LDP. And that was its major selling point. We're sober, we're numbers oriented, and we have clean hands.
So no drinking.
Well, it's not that. I think that their distinguishing feature was we are not the LDP. We're different.
That'll never work then in marketing.
No, probably not. But it
did work when you had a public.
That's so new Coke.
Well, no. I mean, if the LDP does make a lot of fumbles and they look like they're getting a lot of criticism, as an alternative, yes, they can come in. They've got some really great leaders. They've got some great politicians. They've got some people at the upper echelons. The Coke issue really bothers you.
No, it's not a new Coke issue. In that, during a specific time, let's say from the major scandals of the 1970s and 80s onward, the LDP's overall vote was declining, and it made sense to be the not LDP in terms of electoral politics, as long as you could target people who were not in the base. The LDP base is still strong, still loyal. But if you could, as the number of white-collar workers, the number of people who were not affiliated with particular organizations increased, there was a big chunk of the electorate which had no allegiance.
Right.
And if you could say, we're going to do the good things.
Come along. Yeah, come along with us.
We're going to be making the best of Japan because we're not the LDP that brings out the worst in Japan. That had a cachet until they actually got into power, and then they discovered it was incredibly difficult to turn the ship of state.
Right.
It was very hard, and especially when the LDP was rowing the other direction as hard as it could.
And the bureaucracy was also rather used to having the LDP doing things with them, and new sheriff in town, things are pretty difficult.
They weren't able to do it, so that it made sense. But I agree. What is there going to be their brand? And that's the fight, actually.
Right.
Because the fight now is between these conservatives, many of them who are trained at the Matsushita Institute of Government and Management, so that they're real executive types, and deeply involved in furthering their careers. Let's put it that way.
Professional professional. I mean, they're trained as politicians, as opinion leaders.
Yeah,
Right?
Okay, I'm sensing a little problem then.
Okay.
For
Yeah.
Japan.
Okay. So then.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Right.
No.
So you have that faction, and they're the ones who are saying we need to take a very hard right turn and get away from these communists. And if you're not with us, Mr. Okada, our leader, well, then we'll dump you.
Right.
Why not, if you were being a little Machiavellian, why not paint the LDP as sort of more of the elite, kind of the upper class party, and then if you're the DPJ, would it be possible for them to get into class issues, the rising gap between the very rich, which we know is concentrating in Japan, and the rising poor, childhood poverty going up, elder poverty going up. So why not more of a social
You have a
here?
problem because Mr. Okada himself, just as a starter, his dad founded the Aeon supermarket chain. He's got
DPJ guy.
he's got some deep pockets.
Which I've been to a few times, the Eon.
The founder of the DPJ, Mr. Hatoyama, he's the heir to the Bridgestone fortune.
Okay, I'm not saying keep the rich at all.
It's not going to
But
fly.
I was just thinking, if I were a DPJ type, I would be thinking every day, where is my angle? What's my hook here?
Yeah. Well, I think they're struggling with it
Yeah.
Yeah, they
every
are.
day. And the point here is that it is a train wreck in slow motion. I mean, we can watch this happen every day, every week. News comes out about, the factional within this political party, the jockeying that's going on, and we're going to follow what the leader says, and no, we're not going to follow that. And it's
and this week it got really heated.
Well,
they just basically declared war on each other.
My point is variety is the spice of life. So even watching, in contrast, the Republican candidates in the United States, it was really interesting to me because on foreign policy alone, they had a lot of different perspective. So I would like to see a revitalized DPJ because I just think it would be more interesting for us to talk about, put more issues out there on the table. Don't let one party sort of dominate or steamroll because it starts to really sort of disengage, especially younger people coming along. I wonder how many really aspire to join the LDP. Maybe they do if they see it as kind of the professional political class, but there's got to be, in a democracy, a little nipping at the heels regularly. That's what we call it down south.
nipping at the heels. Well, I don't know. How much time do you give the Democratic Party of Japan to get their stuff together, Michael?
Well, they have to get their stuff together by July because that's when we're going to have the election. And so they have to get their stuff together within the next few weeks. The likelihood of that happening, I would actually say, is pretty poor because the issues that are dividing them are based on identity. What is our identity as a party in this new environment? Now, fundamentally, there should be, in every democracy, a ruling party and an opposition. But we are evolving very quickly to an oppositionless party.
Right.
It's from a 2-party system to a 1.5-party system, and now we're down below 1.5.
Right.
Seriously,
It's
we are
a pity.
running out of alternate voices. And the reason why we're not seeing it is because the LDP under Mr. Abe has been extremely careful to preserve the appearance of democratic process.
Right.
Even though they are really an iron fist inside a velvet glove.
Yeah, appearances can be deceiving. I'm going to keep throwing out my cliches to get my point across.
Well, talking about nipping at the heels, we can't finish this conversation until we talk about the Japan Innovation Party too, because as the DPJ begins to implode, they're beginning to figure out their strategy too. We've got an election coming up, this next week for governor and for mayor of Osaka.
For that fraction of it. But the people who are breaking down the DPJ, who are actually the other half of that party, the ones who have the money from that party, and they've got a separate identity from the DPJ, which is still seen as a damaged brand, and they say, hey guys, we're conservatives too.
Yes, with blood in the water,
And
exactly.
Come over to us. We're glad to join together. And mixed into that is the former leader of the Your Party, Eda Kenji, who is basically an amazing weather vane in Japanese politics. You always know when to get out of a party when he leaves it, because you know the party's dead.
Oh.
And now he's doing the opposite. He's trying to create a new party for himself. He managed to blow up the last one he was in, but he's the new manipulator, and he's got his fingers into this.
Look, there's plenty more to talk about this. I think I'd like to close up this part of the discussion. We will be returning to this theme because it comes up all the time. Next week we have another Tokyo on Fire podcast. I'm sure this issue will come up again. Please stay tuned.